going on there, jerk faces? It's your boy Andy, and you're watching Nocturnal Transmissions, brought to you by the Circular Jerks podcast. It's our weekly live stream where we talk about news, current events. Lately, it's been a bit of a more of a arena to work out ideas.
Challenge the mind, if
Challenge
you will.
the mind. There you go. Thanks for the assist, Rob.
Always.
and of course, our movie review, and being as it's the beginning of a new month, that means a new theme, and the theme for March will be memory. So all the movies that we'll be reviewing will have to do with the mind or memory or some such variation thereof.
Oh man, we have a great lineup this month.
So yeah, something to look forward to. But yeah, you got all that in your favorite few hours of streaming material. But with me, co-piloting this thing with me, as ever, is the homeboy Rob.
What's going on, everybody?
I was actually a little bit worried that we. Well, actually, I probably shouldn't have been, but we did. We're initially, we started the stream to fill in like content to keep our channel alive, but then. And then I envisioned this more as a like a news stream where we kind of like talk about the news of the day or whatever is like culturally relevant. But now and I was worried that we weren't gonna be able to come up with any interesting or intriguing topics for discussion. But at the very last minute, I think we were able to pull it off. So.
What, me worry? Like, Andy, come on. Like, we...
I know. It's just, I know it's silly. It's silly. I realize.
We're not Alfred E. Newman here. Like, it's like, what are you worried about? It's like, we always will find something to talk about. There's plenty of stuff.
Indeed, there is. And luckily, we did come up with some topics. Again, it's kind of news, and it actually works out because it's kind of news and kind of culturally relevant. Because we're going to be talking about the sudden explosion of these kind of red pill like dating podcasts.
I think what I think will be fun is because we're starting to see a shift yet again towards like a new style of thinking, like because we've been kind of if you want
to really think about it, it's actually an old way of thinking.
It's like maybe it's kind of like when it's like we're in the era of New Coke and everyone hates it, and then It's like, well, let's go back to the old formula.
Right. That's a spot on analogy. Although I don't remember New Coke all that much, but from what I hear from people, it actually didn't taste too dissimilar from what we know as Coca-Cola Classic.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm drinking a Coke right now, and
that's a different animal altogether. That's Mexican Coke.
That's like you said, but it just reminded me of like, oh, that's kind of a good analogy. What's this Kevin Spacey's character from The Usual Suspects? That's what I kind of did. It's like, let's talk about Coke.
But yeah, we're we can talk about that, and also Rob's gonna pose a very interesting question about eating meat and maybe in general like vegetarianism, maybe shades of veganism.
I definitely would be more against veganism because
well, I mean, fans of the show know how we feel about vegans. And to a lesser extent, vegetarians.
My wife is still upset over that Super Bowl party.
Yeah, for those of you not familiar, Rob went to a friend's Super Bowl party this last month, and another person said that they would take care of the food, and not necessarily the host, right? It wasn't the host.
No, it was not the host.
Okay, so the host did not, provide food, but someone else said that they were going to. And mind you, again, Super Bowl party, proper frame of context, Super Bowl party.
So you're thinking,
and so you think chips, dip,
buffalo wings,
maybe burgers,
hoagies, chili dogs,
hot dogs generally. Your usual fare. But what ended up happening is the person brought. Rob, you have to say, because I don't want those words passing my lips.
It was a whole bunch of vegan food. It was faux meat and salads, and I was like, don't get me wrong, like I don't mind having like a little bit of salad with all that stuff. You need a little bit of
right. Your macaroni or your pasta salads.
Or your crudité, like you got your
your fancy meats, your fancy salamis.
Yeah, but it was we all looked on in horror as like what happened here? Like who gave this?
All right, who's the asshole?
Yeah, it wasn't me. I brought what I said I was going to bring drinks, and you know what? I did not disappoint. I brought, for our friend Santa Claus, Daryl, who obviously he can't drink alcohol, so I brought stuff for him. Mm-hmm. And for the rest of us, like we all wanted beers. So hey, what does everyone want? And I brought what people wanted. I didn't bring some, like, I wasn't bringing like. Duff Zero. Like we're
Although, okay, but going back to your Coke metaphor, I will have to say that I have been enjoying Coke Zero, the new Coke Zero. After like a reformulation that they did, it tastes more like regular Coke than not.
Yeah, okay. Like, I'm not. I will take your word on that. Like
Oh, you never had a Coke Zero?
Hell no.
Oh. Well, I think compared to the past iteration, this is leaps and bounds better. It actually does relate back to the old Coke, new Coke analogy, whereas. They tried the Coke Zero thing. Everyone hated it. They did, they rejiggered it, and they came out with something that generally people do enjoy. And I would say, I wouldn't say that I enjoy the new Coke Zero, but I tolerate it a lot better.
If someone accidentally like, oh shit, this is not right. This isn't Coke. This is Coke Zero. You'd be like, oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. And
yes, I would not be offended if they, if I asked for a Coke and they gave me a Coke Zero, I would not be offended.
Okay. All right.
So to put it in that context. But yeah, just really quickly, yes. The movie for the starting movie for this month is Shock Corridor, starring Peter Breck and Constance Tower.
Yeah, Constance Towers, directed by Sam Fuller. A very, very interesting guy. He is a but like I looked at like his. I watched a documentary on the director that was done by Tim Robbins of all people.
Yeah, that's kind of out of left field.
Yeah, and it was it was Tim Robbins and Quentin Tarantino that did the documentary. And I was looking at like his like lineup of movies that he's done. I was like, well, first of all, he's done one of my favorite all-time war films that we have not. I don't think we discussed it on here. It's The Big Red One with Lee Marvin and.
No, I don't think we have either.
With Lee Marvin and Mark Hamill, and it's easily Mark Hamill's best role. And as much as I love Star Wars, this is where I think this is the best acting that Mark Hamill has ever done. Like he's really good in it. Okay. and it apparently is like it's almost like a semi-autobiographical account of Sam Fuller's life, like because he actually experienced that during World War II. But he's done like all these like really interesting films. I'm just like, yeah, I want to watch that. That looks good. Or the and
And the Big Red One, that's obviously referencing the First Division in the
yep,
Army, right?
yep.
Yeah.
So the when we did Hearts War, Bruce Willis's character was a member of the Big Red One.
Right, exactly.
So that was a good movie too. I really liked that. That was a good choice, Andy.
Yeah, I know. It's like it fell underneath the radar a bit, but I remember watching. I was like, man, this is really good.
Yeah, had I been like kind of more aware back then, I would have totally watched that in theaters because it's really good. It's very underrated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's star-studded. Of course, you got Bruce Willis, you got Colin Farrell. Who's kind of a rising who's a rising star at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, Terrence Howard. Um,
That's right. Yeah.
I can't remember anyone else that was really that prominent.
Yeah, but yeah,
But
very.
there a lot of like familiar faces where you'd be like, oh man,
Right.
he was in this movie.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So the Shock Corridor, I when I did like my spending spree on Blu-rays, there was a bunch of movies that like I had never seen, so I was just kind of going based off of like what I read on the back of the box. Like, I was like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting, and so this is actually one of the first films that we're gonna do that I knew nothing about it going in, and I was just like, oh, and it's the I heard that it was an inspiration for Scorsese when he did Shutter Island. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm in. That sounds cool. And I was not disappointed. I really enjoyed this movie, so I'm looking forward to talking about that.
Okay. All right. Well. Okay. Yeah. Let's get into. Sorry, folks. Let's get into topics for discussion.
Do you want to start off with your topic, Andy?
Yeah, I do. So yeah, as we mentioned earlier, I just noticed a rise in content. Kind of like all dealing in the same topic. Um, like dating, but then also kind of giving a bit of the red pill. Not in the terms of like political red pilling, but just more of like cultural or just like anti-feminism essentially. Because I mean, I think and I'm sure, and I think that goes along better with red pill because you had that movie by that woman, I forget her name, but by the same title, the red pill, and it was mostly about like it was mostly about a feminist going down the rabbit path of or the rabbit hole of the MGTOW movement and finding basically coming out the other side being red pilled and be like, oh my god, feminism is complete trash, and men have been getting the raw deal for so long, and it's just like now she sees. Once she was blind, now she sees. And so lately, yeah, it's just been more and more content has been coming out. I've actually enjoyed some of it. For those of you who may be aware, but like the Fresh and Fit podcast, Pearl Davis, she's a content creator who like basically started like pretty much a network because I think she's based out of London, and I think she has like a bunch of different people underneath, like kind of like her management company or whatever. but she's also done like man on the street stuff where she asks women, these questions about like, oh, about feminism and like, why do you think a man should pay on the first date, yada yada yada. But I think the I guess the godfather of like who really started popularizing it was a man by the name of Kevin Samuels. Um, he was an older gentleman. I think he was an image consultant. And he did a show helping people. I think, well, his clientele was, trying to help, clients like, manage their, online presence and, social media stuff. And, he just started doing a podcast where, he would have women come, call in and, ask him questions and like, oh, how do I get, this type of man, that type of man. And, he would just give them the cold, hard truth of the matter. Um, and and it was, and I have to admit it was quite enjoyable. Um, I even began to adopt some of his terminologies that he came up with. My favorite is sign, like women do sign language, and that's
Hmm.
sign language, SIGN, shame, insult, guilt, and feel the need to be right. Um, so yeah, whenever a woman gets that kind of like emotionally, charged up and like kind of, just kind of goes into those that pattern, of speaking is like shame, insult, guilt, and then just like, oh well, I'm right because XYZ.
Oh,
That being
that
sign
last
language.
one's that last one's so fucking true. It's
Yeah.
so ridiculous. Deal with that. I deal with that on a fucking daily basis.
um, so yeah, and just a few years ago, there wasn't that much content. Um, but now I don't know, like it's I think like you said in the beginning, like there's I would agree that there has been a change. There's been a change in the wind, as it were, and now more and more people are becoming emboldened to speak more forthrightly, on this matter.
Well, and to be honest, like when it and I'm so glad I'm not in that universe anymore, the dating universe,
Hmm.
because honestly, like it is a minefield. Like I said, I'm happy I'm out of it. Um, but like I have a lot of friends who are in it, and it's just like
Yeah, I'm in
and
it.
yeah, but like a lot. There's a lot of men, men and women alike who just they're not happy, and it's like oh yeah, sure that they're I'm not saying not you obviously, but there are some of my friends they sleep around or whatever, both guys and girls alike, and it's but then you look, it's like they're always talking about like, oh I'm so lonely, I'm so this, and it's like that's not something is obviously amiss if you're feeling that way, and maybe pursuing this type of lifestyle, sure it's fun, but after like especially when you're younger, like because you don't really think about the consequences quite as much, but then as you start to get into your late 20s into your 30s, you start to have a little bit more perspective on things, and I think that's when people start to think like, this is, I don't know, I feel unfulfilled, I feel this way, and I think that's why we're starting to see that shift. It's like, maybe just sleeping around, being a degenerate is not really the best course of lifestyle.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And like I say, a lot of people would put this on women, but it's men too. Like it's not like just like one gender over another. Both of them are at least of within like the last what I mean, going into like the 60s and 70s, it's been pretty much like both sides of it just doing uh, not really kind of helping to degrade the culture and at least the dating culture as we know it. And nowadays, like, there's really no responsibility or attachments that people seem to have anymore.
Right. I would agree with you that one hand washes the other in this scenario, but I do ultimately lay it at the feet of men, because what is it, like the first wave and stuff with like the suffragette movement, and it's like women didn't even have a say in whether or not they had a say. Like the whole like vote for the vote. It's like no
Yeah,
woman voted, was able to even vote on whether they or not they could vote. So that means men gave women the vote. So that so men, shirking their moral responsibility, and shielding women from this responsibility, because it's a really heavy responsibility if you think about it.
yeah. Well,
Voting.
and we've even talked about that where there was a lot of women who were, you know, they're not, just because they didn't necessarily, they weren't able to vote, or that doesn't mean that they were stupid. Like, they knew, like, wait a second, we don't want that responsibility. We want to
Right. Well,
be
because exactly that. Because prior to the women, men only attained universal franchise uh, because they agreed to sign up for the draft. Um,
bingo. Yeah,
and
exactly.
so yeah,
Exactly.
so it's like, okay, so the government made a deal with all men, saying, okay, fine, we'll give all men the right to vote, but if we go to war and we need, run low on soldiers, you have to go run in.
Yeah,
You
and
have to go run into the cannons. And they were like, okay, deal. But women had no uh, requirement put on them in
and
that matter.
the other thing too, that's also really, and not because women can vote, but like, as far as like it started the breakdown, and why we're having so many like crises when it comes to our voting nowadays, is because well, back then it was a hell of a lot more a lot simpler, like, where it's essentially like you have one family would have a vote,
Right.
as so the that is, so there would be a lot less uh, chance of some sort of nefarious. I mean, there has been, and there always will be, nefarious things that happen when it comes to voting. It's, there's always going to be people that are going to try to bend those rules, but it was a lot more difficult because, oh, okay, well, there you have a pretty good consent, census of, like, okay, these are the families within this district. We have, there's like this certain amount that it has the ability to vote, and you were able to keep, stronger tabs on that. But now that
Right.
anyone of
Yeah, I mean,
adult,
now we're at the point of like everyone gets, polluted, voter rolls, and so like everyone on this roll, gets a ballot, and it's like it doesn't matter if they even still live at that place, or if that address is even an actual residence. Um, everyone just gets a ballot.
but yeah, but see, that it just makes it messy. And I'm not saying that women shouldn't vote, but it's just saying, like, that is the break right then and there, because yeah, men gave up a certain, like, responsibility,
Hmm.
for better or for worse. It kind of uh, kind of brought us back, kind of brought us, is kind of like, got that ball rolling. And then, like, once, because it was a pretty loud minority of women that were involved in that
Right.
movement.
But yeah, and
By the way, it's also the same people that helped bring about prohibition too.
oh
So
yeah,
just
yeah,
like,
the temperance movement. Yeah, the temperance
yeah,
movement.
they went hand in hand. They're
Yeah,
the same.
and if you saw all the depictions, they're like, I know it was political cartoons and stuff, but all the women were like old hags.
Yeah, they were.
And I don't necessarily think that they were they're trying to make some political point. I think they're being accurate. It's like, yeah, it's all ugly old women who are calling
Yeah.
for for prohibition and and the temperance movement. But yeah, I mean, what a lot of people don't realize is that women actually had the vote. And, I mean, yes, it was more of a vote by proxy, through your husband, father, you know, you know, rare cases uncle or brother, but that was still your vote, and it's not as though you couldn't like voice your concerns to your husband and say like, hey, you know what, I don't think this guy is the right guy for us, or like, oh, I don't think this, I don't think increasing our taxes for this purpose is right.
Yeah.
That,
Well,
that's your vote right there through your husband, and yeah,
here's the misnomer is that people think that like back then, oh, women had no voice at all. Like they were, they if they talked, they got smacked around. So okay, that's not that. Yeah, we see that, it's fun to think about that in movies and stuff like that. And yes, did it happen? Yes, but no one
right. It
liked that.
wasn't. It wasn't the. It wasn't the. Yeah. It wasn't the. It wasn't the majority. It wasn't the It wasn't the culture writ large that every man, like, if their wife ever sassed them or whatever, would give her a fresh one.
I mean, hell, look at like the movie Unforgiven, like where they go to the defense of, essentially like this brothel that these prostitutes that are getting the shit beat out of them.
Right. Yeah. No.
um,
Exactly.
so yeah, nobody likes those guys. Okay, and women were a hell of a lot smarter than people gave them credit for back then. Similar to like how people think that people in ancient times were stupid.
Mm-hmm.
In actuality, they were probably hell of a lot smarter than a lot of people
Yeah.
than
I
our
mean, shoot.
today.
Freaking the like Romans invented waterproof waterproof concrete. How
Shit
many?
that still
Yeah,
is
and they
it's still
developed.
working
Yeah,
today.
they developed a concrete that lasted for over a millennium, like 1,000 years.
Still usable
Yeah,
today.
still like yeah, the Pantheon, in Rome, that was built in ancient times. It's still standing. It looks like it was built just like 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's insane. Um, and they had the ear of like their husband. You look at it once. I bring up these movie examples, but because that's I think they do speak to the truth of what was going
Yeah,
on.
the
You
broader
look at
truth, the broader
yeah,
truth.
yeah. You look at a movie like The Gunfighter with Gregory Peck, right? Well, yeah, he is the main character, but if really the driving force of the movie is the woman that he's involved with, the school teacher who, gave birth to his son.
Mm.
She's really the driving force of the movie, and everyone in town respected her, and like they protected her in a lot of ways, and and like a lot of the women that were like raising they weren't just raising children, they were raising the town. The future of the town was held in their hands. Uh, they were the one that were essentially raising the next generation of people. And honestly, like I think our world was in a lot better of a spot back then because of that.
Right. Uh, yeah, I mean, yeah, and it's so funny because I had this conversation with a friend of mine, and she's a recovering feminist. Um, and I remember I sent her a link to a pastor that I follow, and he was exegeting, yeah, he was exegeting um, the parable of the talents.
Yeah.
And I sent it to her, and then he during his exegeting, he mentioned, he kind of made a uh, off the cuff remark about how, like, he would if the opportunity arose, he would repeal the 19th Amendment. Um, and then and my friend, she texts
Oh
me
man.
back. She texts me back, and even though she's a recovering feminist, and so, like, she's she understands where she went wrong, and all that stuff. but like that still kind of irked her, and she knows where I stand on like the whole 90th Amendment too. I remember, because we went on a trip and we were in the car together, so
Oh
we
yeah,
had.
you told me about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then and I told her like, yeah, yeah, women ruined everything. If we could, there was a vote tomorrow whether or not to repeal the 19th. I would vote to affirm that notion. Um, but it's funny because like she said that she then went and like watched other sermons that he gave, talking about, and then also like explicitly mentioning how women shouldn't vote and things like that. And she came at me. I thought she was gonna, I don't know why, but like she knows like where my position is, and she knows like I know like this is just like that's my wishful thinking, you know. Um, but it was funny because like she's like saying, oh, like she first like kind of fought me on it, and then she at the end of her text she was like, it's like yes, but I agree that women like me are very emotional and like and we're not very logical, and I think and I think you're right that I basically agreeing with the point, but going doing like this whole kind of going the long way essentially to come and back and basically say you're right.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. So pretty much, you had all this fight just to tell me that I was right. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
God, that must have hurt.
Yeah, I mean she's a sweet girl and everything, but I
Yeah.
mean because
There's been a
she's
few arguments with my wife that have ended. So pretty much what you're saying, you got all upset, and now
yeah,
you.
and then you thought about it, and then you looked into the matter, and then you found out that I was right.
Oh man, that must have hurt you.
I know. I'm so sorry for that. But yeah, it's like yeah. Again, she's a recovering feminist, and like she now like realizes like the errors of her ways, and just like all the wasted years of her like thinking that that she needed to be at this level, and she had to get all of this stuff first before she started her family or start a family, and she's just utterly wrong.
Yeah,
So I do have compassion for her.
well, and even when it comes to like my wife, it's now if it was possible, I because I don't want her. She's a person. She doesn't necessarily like to just sit around. I think there are things that she wants to do and accomplish, and I I unfortunately right now it's kind of like it's a little bit out of necessity. We uh, things are expensive or whatever. So I wish she didn't have to work. Like if it was more of like I wanted it to be like her choice, so that way, I think she would find more enjoyment and fulfillment out of it. Whereas for like where there's right now, maybe there's just a little bit more pressure, and there's more pressure on me because I want to earn more money, so that way it does become a thing where she can choose to do what she wants to do. It's not like she's um, forced to, kind of like in a more pressurized situation. And, uh, I don't want her to, I don't think that every woman should like, oh, you just need to be a stay at home mom. You have to do all that. Like, that does, for some people, that just doesn't quite work. But I think there need, like, what did we do? We talked about like last week where, um, with the situations of, uh, kind of like the unconventional homes or whatever. Like, oh, like I had a friend of mine who, it was his mom that worked, and his dad was the one that stayed at home or whatever. And it's like that doesn't necessarily mean that like that seems like a kind of a backward situation, but that is something that does happen. And um, sometimes you gotta when you're in that dating arena you want to I think people are so worried about like what their expectations are, like what is this meant to be? Is this supposed to be just something like, are you just want to hang out and go places, or are you seriously dating thinking that there's something to have some sort of like goal in mind? are we dating to get married? If that's the case, then we should really think about like what exactly are our expectations? What are our plans for the future? What are you kind of the what it would be like? Oh man, don't talk about that on the first date. That's crazy. Um, but like those are the things that you need to start talking about instead of just you know kind of going off of like your hormones and your attraction and essentially guys thinking with their dick. It's like yeah, we kind of need to get away from those things and think in a different way, which is essentially the old way. It's the
Right.
Coca-Cola Classic as opposed to New Coke. Yeah, it's just kind of going back to that
Yeah,
sort
and
of.
I think women need to disabuse this notion of them like having to like achieve, certain like benchmarks, like, oh, I have to go to school, or I have to make, or I have to have my own money, or I have to, I have to be well traveled, and one of the things that is constantly being espoused is that, a woman's money, a woman's achievements does not make her sexier. All right, it's like, oh, like, a woman doesn't tell a man, it's like, oh, I make 100 grand, 100 grand a year. It's like, oh, dang, oh boner. You're like, no, that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
Or like, oh, it's like, oh, I've been to this place or this place or this place. Like, cool for you. It's like, like, if you're on a date and the woman says like, oh, well, I've been to this place and this place and this place. That's good for you, but just, a man's gonna sit there and hear this and be like, okay, then where, are we supposed to go? If you've already been to all these places, like, there's no place where it'll be just for us. You've already been there, so what onus is it on me to take you anymore?
and I think too. Yeah, I think that they're because I think the one of the false things is that that one of the big lies that has been given to women, and to be honestly, like this is for guys too, that like, oh, we can have it all, and it's like no, no, no. Life is full, like life is full of compromise. Okay, so you want the career, that's great. If that's really, if like you find something that fulfills you, and like that's something like that you want to pursue, that's fantastic. That's great. And you're really good at it, when you're man or woman. But you know what? There's a sacrifice that has to be made, especially and especially with like with women, it's like you might not be able to have that family, or you might not be able to have like the marriage or the relationship. And that's, but if like you said, if the work for you is fulfilling and you feel like you're making something of yourself, and you find genuine joy out of that, I if that's how you want to live your life, that's fine. I actually have no problem with that. But the idea where you get a lot of these women who go that route, but they're unhappy because they do want to have the family, they do want to have these other things in their life, but it's like they they can't do it all. Like I said, okay, if having kids and having a family is something that like you feel that desire for, well, that comes at a compromise too, because now because you want those things, you can't altogether spend all the time at this job that you feel that you want. And so you have to make a choice. Well, maybe I should work less, or maybe not work for a while and take care of my family. Uh, I think the we were talking last week about how there's back in like the 80s and 90s, famously with like Full House was the single, a lot of single dads. But then you also got what I don't know. Did you ever watch Murphy Brown growing up?
No, but I was aware of it.
Yeah. So one of the big storylines, I think, towards the end of that series was where Murphy Brown.
Yeah, she was
Uh,
like, she was the prototypical career woman, and later on, like, she realized that she wanted a family.
Right. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about, and but because that was such an influential character, especially on a lot of women, that's kind of like the route that, oh well, I don't need a man to adopt a child and like raise a family, and I think that's, well, one, that hurts the kid. It's like, as far as like, the lady who's talking about how it's actually like it's single moms actually haven't really helped kids out very well. um, not in every case, but like over a general trend.
Right. Well, yeah, the statistics for children reared by a single mother are not great. They're like the majority of violent offenders, or the violent,
Yeah.
there's a greater majority of them who end up homeless. Particularly for men, this is they're particularly highest percentage of of rapists and sexual abusers.
Right.
So
Like I said, it's a
again,
general.
not all, hashtag not all. All right, but
Yeah.
we're not talking. We can't talk about the specific. We have to talk about the general, because the exception is statistically irrelevant.
Right. But yeah, like that kind of started a huge trend, I think, among kind of the among the feminists, like, oh, I can have it all,
Yeah.
and it's
Well, I
like,
mean,
no,
just
that's,
look at freaking Charlize Theron.
oh
You know,
God.
yeah. I mean, she's the Murphy Brown of this age. She successful actress. And goes and adopts like two black kids, and it's like, oh, I can do this all on my own. But then, she in a recent or not all that recent, but in a relatively recent interview, she talks about how, like, yeah, her mom helped her out a lot with the kids, and how it sucks being a single mom, and like trying to find someone, find a man to wife her up. It's like, bitch, you're on the wrong side of 30 and you have two kids.
Yeah, like there's not, it takes a very special type of man to take on that responsibility.
Right, especially if he's not coming to it with the kids of his own.
Exactly. That's the other thing. Like, because that's a lot to take on. It is. And there's not, like I said, there, you cut your chances of meeting someone in drastically. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even for someone as attractive as Charlize Theron, because she is one. I've seen her in person. She is as attractive as she looks like in the movies.
Good to know.
And yeah, that's not doctored look. That's not a doctored look. She actually does look that good.
Right, but yeah, it's just like, she swallowed the line, hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think, like I said, I think
yeah,
that's, it's the same thing for a guy too. Like, is it more important? Okay, yeah, I can work an extra 10 or 20 hours a week, and I'll make like some amount of much more money. But then you sacrifice that, if you are one that wants to have a family, like, you miss out on your kids growing up. You miss it. Like, there's especially when we talk with, like, when you look at like sports stars, right? Like, whether it be race car drivers, baseball players, what have you. They're on the road a lot. Like, they might be, especially with like NASCAR drivers. They're on the, like, in people involved with that sport. You're on the road 10 months out of the year. Like, you get maybe a month and a half to spend with your family, and so a lot of these guys don't really
right.
get to see
Well,
their, all
okay.
the,
Yeah. Well,
they
this is
don't get
where
to.
I give a little bit leeway for the men, because men, we have to be the ones to out there working, and to provide for the family and things like that.
Well,
And I
I'm
mean, and
not.
even for like single men, like I would, I give a little bit more slack to, because, you know, women, they're given their value up front. A woman, is born rich and and becomes poor, where a man is born poor and becomes rich.
Yeah.
And
No,
so
what I mean
and
that
like
is,
yeah, I mean there is a biological component, and men, they typically have to work longer to get to the point where they can be attractive, you know, economically or financially attractive.
no, well, what I'm saying, like
And
my
so
point to that is, like I said, my point to that is, but they can't have it all either. Like if you want
right,
to,
but I think men are more girded to being single than women.
yeah, well, no, yeah, because you can, hell, I was
Yeah,
thinking
I
of
mean,
like,
outside of the propagation of the human species, men can be alone uh, better than women.
yeah, I agree with that. Um, but I'm just saying, like, but there, like I said, there
Right,
comes,
but to your point,
in
yeah,
anything
yeah,
you do, there
there are
there is
trade-offs.
compromise.
There are still trade-offs.
Yeah,
Yeah, like yeah, and I
that's the
mean,
point I'm trying to make.
like yeah, even if you're not like the 1%, like of like top athletes or CEOs, whatever. Like if you're just a 9 to 5er, and you decide to pick up extra shifts, to help pay for your kids' braces or whatever, then yeah, you're missing out on your kids, and that sucks.
But like we've been fooled um, as a society that we can have it all, and if we don't have it all, well then like it's like it's society has broken down, and it's a terrible, like, oh, it's we gotta rip down the fence posts of society and create a whole new
Right. Well, yeah,
world order.
they're trying to destroy the foundations and say like, oh, well, we can build a better one. It's just like, but why mess with success?
When life has always been about, there's always compromises in life. You have to choose what is most important for you, and it's like what's the best thing for yourself, what's the best thing for your family, what is gonna bring fulfillment, not only to like your life but your family's life. And we kind of forget to think about, but like our our local neighborhood is also kind of like important too. That uh, the you know I think a lot of the problems we have in society is because we are so selfish. People are just wanting to do, like, they only care about themselves, and it actually, by doing that, I think of a famous Simpsons episode where everyone tries to act like Bart. It's like, oh, just do what you feel, and it's like, well, I don't feel like doing my job today, and then you see like essentially almost destroys the town, because no one's like thinking about like their jobs. They're just thinking about like what makes them feel good in the moment.
Right.
And that's kind of like where we're at right now. We're at a society where we're just gonna do what feels good, damn the consequences.
Right. Well, I mean, let's kind of get back on track. The reason why I want to talk about this is because, you know, um, I just, I don't necessarily think that feminism is beaten or defeated, but it has been beaten back. And and then I think I think a lot of people now are like, particularly like the podcast that I mentioned, they're definitely benefiting on people who've been in like this fight for a long time, and and I'm glad that they exist. I'm pleased that they exist, because I mean, even as long as we've been kind of like refuting the tenets of feminism, things like that, I realize our reach is limited, and so um, to have like these bigger platforms, like the Fresh and Fit podcast, Kevin Samuels, whatever podcast, Pearl Davis,
Yeah, I'm
I'm really
glad
glad
that,
that they exist.
yeah, same here, because I think, yeah, because they do have like a bigger reach than us, which is which is fine with me.
Mhm.
And it's like, but they're talking about things that are important, that are good, and not because they're like it has nothing. Oh, they don't hate women. They want to make a better society,
Right.
and
Yeah, and I
kind of
mean,
exposing.
yeah, to give them even more credit, it's like they're, because like the Fresh and Fit guys, they're, they achieve something. They're successful entrepreneurs and millionaires, and so like they don't just talk about like the women, like the dating stuff. They also talk about like, how to improve your credit, how to like what's the best, how to invest your money, what, and all that stuff. So
We
I
should
think, and so I think it's also
uh,
providing, it's also providing kind of like a boot camp for men to like, get their shit together, get their money right before going out uh, and getting themselves, a wife. But I think, but the only criticism that I would give them is that um, they they mostly advocate that men don't get married, and I completely understand why, because I do realize that the system is rigged against men, like completely.
yeah.
Like, particularly in like family courts, divorce proceedings. There, I mean, particularly like what I like recently found out, that I still haven't looked into it, but if true, that is some fucking evil shit.
Oh
For
man,
those of you who didn't catch last week's episode, but I came upon some information that um, in family courts, when the judge rules in favor, usually of the woman, and for the man, and rule that the man, pay child support or whatever, like part of that settlement, or like, that payout goes to like a judicial pension for judges.
yeah. If that's true, that's fucking bullshit.
Yeah, yeah. If that's true, that's fucking bullshit. And so I do, and so I would agree. So if that were true, and all things being the same in the legal system, that go against men, I completely understand why they advocate for men not to get married. But that'd be my only criticism for them. My response to that would be, it's like, you just have to do your, due diligence, and vet the woman as best you can. Because I mean, we're me and Rob, we're coming from more of a traditional Christian background, um, and so yeah, like in the beginning, in Genesis, God gives a command. It's like, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth. Um, and so that means, you get married and you have children. Um, so but I yeah you just, but would advocate for marriage, but only, but you make sure that you're on the same page with the woman,
That's
spiritually
yeah.
and religiously, before you make the plunge. And like, if you don't do that, then you're a fool and you don't have my sympathies.
I think you have to, when you were thinking about doing that. I know it sounds kind of like cold to do it this way, but like you like I said, you have to have a very serious conversation. What are the goals?
Mm-hmm.
What are you almost have to take like any sort of like, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't be physically attracted to the person you want to be with. I mean, because I that there is that is an important aspect, but the real important aspects are, what are your um, do we
Yeah,
have
what are your non-negotiables?
exactly, and you come up with a list, and here's the things I cannot budge on,
Yeah, and I think,
and then
as a man, you have to take into account more than the woman.
yeah, and but I'm saying, but women should do this too, because it's
Well, yeah,
and
like especially if you're a Christian woman.
yeah, it's the reason why we have such a high divorce rate. For one, is because no one does this anymore. No one's really thinking about um, what they're doing. They're just like, yeah, it sounds good. This is what people do. And then after like 5 or 6 years, they're like, oh, we had an argument. Like, oh, this isn't working, and I don't like conflict, so we're gonna get divorced. It's like that's and a lot of times then you end up getting kids involved, and then there's like it creates a whole mess. And I have a lot of friends who have been divorced, and they've dealt with the family courts and all this stuff. And let me tell you, like, I don't have this from like firsthand experience, and I hope and I never will, because just not gonna happen. But good
Although
God,
you
like,
came close, like 5 minutes after you got married.
oh, yeah. No, it's but yeah, it's like what these guys have to go through, and it's like in reality, like, the only people that really lose in that are the freaking kids that are involved. And because then this also kind of breaks them a little bit, because now they have this jaded view of like marriage, and it just sucks.
Yeah.
And we all watched, I don't think we ended up talking about it, but we did watch the movie together. Like, we watched, the Squid and the Whale. Oh God, that horrible
Yeah,
scene.
that's.
But like, Marriage
And it's one of
Story.
those movies where I hated everyone in that movie.
Oh, the Squid and the Whale. Yeah, I hated everybody in that film.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was just, but it's kind of like, but that's what divorce creates. It creates a whole messy thing. But then we had the Marriage Story with Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, which is a much better film as opposed to the Squid and the Whale. I didn't hate the characters there as much.
Right. I mean, I hated what they went through, but I didn't necessarily hate the characters.
No, and actually, and I think that movie did actually a really good job of showing how it did show both sides. Like, it didn't make Adam Driver look like he's just a typical man. It's all his fault. No, it wasn't. It showed that they're both at fault, that they both made dumb, terrible mistakes, and the only person that really lost was their kid.
Yeah, was their kid.
And I think, and that's the reality. And that's why I actually kind of like that movie, because it didn't sugarcoat it, and it didn't make one person to be the hero and one person to be the villain, because that's real. In reality, that's not the case. It takes two people to fuck up a marriage. In most cases, I'm not saying that's always the case, because but like the 95% of the time, it's both people that fucked up, and that's why marriages end. Like I said, there are the few exceptions where, like, oh yeah, like this guy is an abusive, jerk.
But I would, yeah, but that's again the minority. An interesting, data point is that 70% of all divorces are initiated by the woman.
That is crazy to think about.
And if they're college educated, it's 90%.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
It's that high?
It's that high. If they're college educated.
Good Lord.
Yeah. The women are 90%. The one that.
That is not.
They're 90% of college age women initiate divorce.
That is not
college educated.
That is not what the media would say.
No. But that's just statistics. I forget. I think the late. Probably just like statistics or like whatever. Before I wrap this up, I kind of had an epiphany about feminism and about the origins, and some might point to, like, as we did, like the temperance movement, back in like the late 1890s to in 1900s. But I dare say that it started way earlier, and that's actually in the garden.
Hmm.
Um, and my argument is um, that and it was actually Satan, the one, the devil was the one to plant it in the mind of Eve,
Yep.
because because the devil slyly went to the woman, because I think the devil knew the nature of woman, so he slyly went to her and asked her, it's like, oh, is it true, that you will die, if you eat of this fruit? It's like, oh yeah, well, that's what I was told. And then the devil says, like, oh no, that's true. Surely you will not die if you eat of this, but you'll become like God. Um, and that,
It also shows the weakness of men there too, because Adam was there the entire time listening to this shit, and he didn't do anything.
right. But yeah, it's like it was the devil who was the originator of feminism, because um, Eve didn't get that command directly from God.
Right.
Eve got that directly from her husband, and so the devil basically was saying, "Oh, don't believe your husband.
Believe yourself.
But yeah, it's like, believe what I'm saying, because I'm the one who's really telling you the truth. Because I'm trying to empower you. I'm trying to make you like God. So you should listen to me and not your husband."
Yeah.
And so yeah, so you know, that's my argument for the feminism actually starting day one practically, and in the garden. Because yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, because what is feminism, really about? It's like, oh, you can't trust the word of a man. Even if that man is your husband, or if that man is your father.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't trust them. They're trying to hold you back. They're trying to hold you down. Oh, they didn't teach you right. It's like, oh, like, yeah, he said, oh, honey, he said that you're gonna die. It's like, really, you're gonna die if you eat this? It's like, that just sounds like an insecure man trying to hold you down, queen. You know?
Yeah. It's like the Def Jam version, like a modern Def Jam version of
Yeah, the
the
Garden of Eden. Yeah, the fall of man, but it's like, yeah, the snake honey. It's like, oh, honey, you a queen. The man's just trying to hold you down. All right, because he's afraid of your power. Okay.
the role of shall be played by RuPaul.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if you really think about it, it makes a lot of sense.
Oh man, yeah. I know. I see exactly what you're saying. Like this, the seeds of it were planted right then.
Mm-hmm.
And because it makes sense, because you know, uh, man and woman were always supposed to be like some kind of like they're co-equal genders. Kind of like they have different roles, but they're together. They're working together. They're a team. And essentially, what happened in the garden was a split of that team, and now you have a group of individuals that are at odds with one another, and you almost have to fight against those odds to stay united. And that's kind of like what it has obviously progressed to a greater degree nowadays. And yeah, we certainly have, kind of like what you call the battle of the sexes, whatever the hell you want to call it. But it is a very tough thing. And you, like you said, me being married, yeah, it's honestly, it is a constant battle to stay on the same page. um, and a lot of times that takes a lot of compromise, and there's so many times I end up having to like just bite my tongue for a second, just like, okay, let me hear you out, and okay, well, here's where I'm coming at it, and you had to find some sort of middle ground to come back together. And but there's a lot of people who don't want to go through that battle. They just want to like, no, I'm gonna do it my way. Fuck that. And that's where like we have, I think, a lot of the current
Well,
state of
well, that's
feminism.
where like I might differ from you because yes, it's a partnership, but there's still a hierarchy in that, and
Oh, I no, that I'm
right,
not.
but I think a man should be a page or two ahead of his wife, and then lead her into following him, and making her understand, like making her and again being fulfilling that teacher role. Where it's like the man is like a page or two ahead in the book, but he goes, okay, here, this is why we're going this way, or here's what's ahead for us.
Yeah, I well, no, like I said, I'm not. We're not in disagreement because we're. I think we are saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just, it's not like, well, I'm gonna rule over women. No, that's I'm not. That's not what it is. It's never been like that. But it's always been, yes. There is that hierarchy, but at the same time, they are man and woman. There, the woman is there to, we're there to care for one another, to serve one another.
Right,
Um,
yeah, and biblical submission. A woman should submit to her husband, and likewise, a man should, like the way a man again, like the way that men and women submit to each other is completely different. And it's like the woman submits herself to the husband in all things. Like that he rules the household. He makes the decisions, but then a man submits to his wife by laying his life down for her. And
yeah,
that doesn't necessarily mean like just like death. Like he would say, like if a bus was coming, he would push her out of the way and get hit by the bus. But just like also like putting his life down, as the one going to work, working the hard, uh, doing the hard labor, and such and such.
yeah. It's in. I think that with the everyone kind of like shits on that model, but man, it worked for millennia.
For
And,
basically all of human history.
right.
That's where we're because people. I mean, what we would modernly acknowledge as feminism is only like 100 years. Only 100 years out of. I mean, if you're a young Earth theorist, then like 6,000 years.
Yeah.
Like 100 years out of 6,000 years, and you're saying like, oh no, but this is way better. Come on.
Yeah. Yet we have more people depressed and unhappy like we've
Right?
never
Yeah.
had.
Like the since World War II, the happiness metric or index for women is only been going down.
Yeah, and for
Yeah.
men too. Men.
For men too, but I think men are just less likely to bitch about it. Um,
Not
and
what I see on social media. Good God.
well, yeah, again, those are bitch men.
True.
Oh, God, what was I gonna say?
But the happiness metric for women is
Oh,
uh,
right, yeah,
lower.
because a woman, what is it? Like one of the biggest purveyors of the lie of feminism was, I forget her name, but the lady who wrote the original book Sex in the City, which the TV
Oh
show
yeah.
was became based on. Yeah, she like 4 years ago she got divorced at 60, and she was the Sarah Jessica Parker character in
Yep.
that TV show, and she was 60 years old. She had no kids. All she had was her husband and her career. And guess what happened? At 60 years old, they got divorced, and all she had that she didn't even really have her career. Yeah, she had her money, but she didn't have any kids. She didn't have any grandkids,
Yeah.
and she wrote that she regrets not having a family.
Yeah. I remember hearing about that. I was like, yeah, and it's too late now.
Yeah, and it's too late. It's too late. And then again, that goes back to what we're teaching, to girls. at a very early age. Like, oh, queen, you can get it, get your bag. Don't you settle for no man.
Yeah, and it's just too bad, to be honest. It's like I hear that and it's like that's a tragedy. And yeah,
It really is.
and to be honest, it's not. Is it? Some people are like, oh well, that's what she gets. It's like, well, to be honest, I don't think that that's a proper response. That is what she has probably heard her entire life,
Right.
and so that's what she did. And it's like, oh my,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. And that's where the compassion side has to come in. I mean, it's the same thing with like
I do,
the
and
whole.
I do feel compassion for that woman because
Right.
that's that she realized she made a mistake, but like there's unfortunately there's nothing that can really be done to fix that, and that's really
Right. And I
tragic.
mean, yeah, and I mean, again, that's where the compassion angle has to come, because it's like these women, their entire lives, and particularly if they're of a specific age, like within the time frames of like at least like second wave to fourth wave feminism, that's all they were hearing their entire lives. That's like, oh, you can't trust a man. You got to get you have to have your own money. You have to have your own career. Because a man, you can't depend on a man. It's like, it's like, but the only modification that I would say to that is like, yes, but you can't you can't trust a shitty man.
Yeah,
But also compassion, and it's the same reason why I say that. I mean, again, this is wishful thinking, but that's why compassion should be put on people with what is it school loans. It's like their entire lives they were told, like, if you don't go to
yep,
college, you're gonna be a piece of shit. You're gonna be a bum. You're gonna live. End up making less than a janitor, and blah. And all you're gonna do is flip burgers for the rest of your life. That fear was placed into everyone. It was we were funneled into the the school industrial complex.
yeah.
And people who honestly should not have been there, who didn't have the mind for it, didn't have the what's the
And that doesn't mean that they're dumb. It's just like
no, yeah, they just don't have,
school.
yeah, they didn't have the mind for academics.
Yeah,
you
and it's
know
like, and
and
that's
that's
fine.
not
That
fine,
doesn't.
because you might not be able to write a paper on the socio political themes of Tolstoy. But maybe you can assemble a hot water heater with your eyes closed.
Which I can do.
Exactly.
The
I
and
mean,
so yeah, you're right. It's kind of like you. I think we need to like not laugh or chastise these people, but it's like where you feel compassion because there's been a lie that has pervaded in society. Like, yeah, all these students were led into creating this society of debt that it's like it was almost nearly forced peer pressure for
right,
everyone
exactly.
involved.
Every teacher, every guidance counselor, every well-meaning parent who because like they didn't go to school, and they were just like a blue-collar worker, and they wanted something more for their children. And so they said like, oh, you have to go to school, you have to, and drilled it into their heads from the time they were born.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
So have compassion, and
oh well, they took on.
just like for these women who are constantly told, it's like, oh, don't trust no man, make your own money. A career is just as good as having kids.
Yeah, and
Have compassion for them.
and I do. It's just yeah, I don't. I look at someone like like Chelsea Handler. I mean, she's kind of a nasty woman, but at the same time, I kind of feel sorry for her because I think she puts on this run like, oh yeah, I don't need any of that crap, and it's like you look in her eyes like that is one of the sad. She is one of the most depressed people
Oh
on
yeah,
the.
yeah. That that supposed own video, like to all the people with like kids and family and stuff. It's like, oh, well, I have to call the kids. Oh no, I don't, because I don't have any. But on the inside, she's like, you know, deep kind of, unconsolable crying that that people often do.
Yeah.
That's what's really going on in the inside for
Oh
her.
God.
And
Yeah.
again, compassion for Chelsea Handler, even though she's an insufferable bitch. Compassion for her.
I do. It's like I feel bad for her. And I feel like I said, I feel bad for the women that get treated badly and they've been lied to, and they get to a point in their life where it ends up becoming too late for them to like, oh man, this thing didn't make me happy. This thing, this lifestyle did not make me happy. I should have been I should have gotten married. I should have had a family. I should have done this. And it's like it's almost too late. Or it is too late.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you gotta, and China is going through something similar. Not one to one, but like because they used to have that one child policy, and a lot, and a lot of families only wanted boys, and so they came a generation of girls were raised, and now like they have this what is what's that phrase, um, what is it? They have the tragedy of plenty, I guess, because for every like one girl, there's like I forget what the number is, but some like ridiculous amount of
It's
men.
insane.
So these women can are basically have the pick of the litter,
Yeah.
which then bring kind of in the same way that feminism has poisoned the mind. Like they have like this entitlement sort of attitude where it's like, oh, like who's gonna buy me the biggest bag, or who's gonna buy me the nicest car, and that's the guy that I'm gonna go with. Um, but child's one child policy came at even more greater cost because of their demographics collapse. Because China is kind of like in the U.S. And they're super like the average age in America is like 60 something.
God. Yeah. It's like we're
Yeah,
an
and I mean
aging. Japan has
similarly
the same
that's what's
problem.
going on in China too. And so
Japan
yeah.
has the same problem too because their population averages because they're not having kids either,
Mm-hmm.
and like their average age is getting really old to the point where they're worried that like within the next couple of generations we might not actually have a Japan. It
Yeah. Oh,
might
yeah.
not.
Same thing for Korea too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might be an extinct species or something equivalent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have anything else really to say on this matter. Do you have any closing
No,
thoughts
I
or?
don't. But it was kind of interesting. I didn't expect us to talk that long about this, but yeah, it's just kind of interesting to think about, like, um, and you connect those dots from the past to today, and like, how did we get here? It's like it's actually very easy to kind of pinpoint like how we've gotten here.
Right,
Yeah,
there are some pretty big landmarks, on that map. So it's so the like kind of the trail, doesn't, it's not hard to trace back.
yeah, we can look at the breadcrumbs behind us and see like where how we got here.
It's like, oh, right. It's like, oh, the temperance movement. Oh, suffragette movement. Oh, yeah, sexual liberation. It's like, oh, hormonal birth control. Oh,
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's not just one thing. It's a multitude of things that have culminated over the past 100 150 years or so, and it's kind of like now it's kind of culminated into what we have today.
mm-hmm.
And you know what? It's going to take a concerted effort to kind of eliminate that thinking and go back to a way that is more fulfilling for humanity. That's more that will be more beneficial for humanity. And like I said, that might take 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It might take a while to kind of jumpstart that and go back.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good to see that there's people that are thinking about that. It's like, you know what, this is not working. Let's rethink this.
Right. Yeah. So, all right. Yeah, good discussion on that. Let's move on to the next topic, and that's Rob's topic.
Yeah, once again, another thought exercise, and obviously, like one of the big trends now is the idea of not honestly, it's not even just vegetarianism because like that's a whole different thing, but like the whole vegan culture and like there's the whole Beyond Meat. I don't know. I don't even know if it's a fad anymore. I think it's pretty much like what there you any place that you go to now get our Beyond Meat. Like it's like or they call it they either call it Beyond Meat or like some other like fancy words. Like, oh, that sounds interesting. And all it is, it's fake plant meat. It's not meat. It's uh, some sort of concoction that is made to look like meat. Um, and I what it got me thinking about in the book of Acts, where Peter is given a vision from God about like where God kind of like opens up the heavens and there he brings down all of the meats that in the past Jewish culture could not eat because it's like, oh, these are unclean animals. So you're looking at like pigs and so on and so forth. And when God says like you know go and eat your fill, Peter, it's like, but I can't, Lord, these are unclean animals. It's like who who's to say, how dare you say that like my creation is unclean? And that's it was kind of like a transformation in Peter's journey as a believer, one of many in the course of his life that we see the Bible. But nowadays we have kind of like a similar group of people who really hate meat for whatever the reason being. And they're like, they want to, no, we need to, almost like eating meat is unclean, so we need to have a different option, so we're going to have this fake meat. And yeah, I'm not I wasn't sure if like, I don't know why I kind of made that correlation or like, but I was wondering what your thoughts were on the whole situation, Andy.
Well, I mean, I think everyone knows where where I land on the whole like vegetarian veganism thing. But I think vegetarianism and veganism, are they're religious acts. They're not necessarily comporting to Christianity, of course. They're their own religion. But what is it? And like the whole thing about not eating meat uh, because of cruelty or because they some even say like because that animals have a consciousness or whatever. Um, it's ritual without the rite, and rite being RITE.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Um, because you're essentially especially for those who make it more of like a morality thing and like and try to say that, oh, animals have a conscience too, animals have are just as sentient as human beings. Oh, cows mourn if one of the herd is killed or whatever. It's like,
No, they don't.
no, they
Cows are fucking
don't.
stupid.
Like, will I completely deny animals having any emotion? No, of course not. Just as just as any animal would protect its young, so would a human. But that doesn't mean I grant, I what's that word?
They have a sentience to a degree, but not like in the way that like
Right. I
you are.
wouldn't anthropomorphize the animal. I wouldn't attribute the same human understanding or depth of human emotion to an animal.
Like I said, I've had pets in the past, and like obviously, like I'm not gonna beat the shit out of like my dog or cat, because one, I think that's wrong to do, but like at the same time, I don't think of them as a human. They are different. Like, and like I said, that doesn't mean I'm gonna be cruel to them, but I'm not gonna. I don't, at the same time, I don't think that they're human.
Right. Yeah, but there are those, who argue for like species based or speciesism, and like how like no species is greater than the other. But I mean, if ever I got into a discussion or debate about this, I would ask the person who's on that side or arguing that point. It's like, okay, point to the greatest artistic accomplishment by a pig. Point out the greatest structural engineering feat by a cow.
Those 1,000 monkeys are typing up Shakespeare as we speak.
I know, as we speak. And it's like you can't attribute something to a herd animal to the same as a human being.
Yeah, like when it comes to like people who make the argument about they don't really like how the reason why they choose not to eat meat is because they don't like how the current meat producers, how they're producing the meat, like like we talk like factory farming, stuff like that. I think there's honestly I think that's a great argument because I don't think that we should torture the animals, just to produce food. And I also think that people who do a lot to, who are against, that work to fight against like the cruelty against like dogs and, other animals. We what was it? God, now going on like what 3 years ago now? Like we did when we were doing the Tiger King review, right? Which was fascinating as all hell. That was one of the craziest documentaries, docuseries I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But there's an argument to be made that that some of the people involved in that were maybe not the best to those animals. And I think that's wrong. And like I said, and I'm very sympathetic to those things. But does that mean but I'm not going to go to the crazy spectrum of like, I'm going to not eat meat because of that. Because to me, that feels like it's kind of like disordered in a sense. Like, they're, and like I said, this comes to our religious beliefs, but we hold dominion over the things of the earth. We have a responsibility to act in a
right.
as good stewards.
Stewards.
Yeah, we shouldn't damage the planet. We shouldn't throw our trash everywhere. We shouldn't torture and beat the shit out of the animals that we eat. Because that one of the people that do that, that's one of those isn't that like the early signs of like serial killers, that they're torturing animals?
Yeah, I mean usually small animals, because they're small.
Yeah.
Because they're smaller and
weaker.
Defend them. Yeah, weaker.
Yeah.
So.
But it's the animals of the earth are there for, they are there as sustenance, and that doesn't mean that we can't have them as companions in some way, because people do.
Right, and before we started, kind of postulated this. Uh, it's more of a rhetorical question, but whether or not when God said, "Oh, eat of any plant of the garden," except for the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Like, do you think that was like a forever thing? Because the way God made us. I mean, if you attest to biblical teachings and stuff, that we are created beings. We didn't evolve. Um, but that means God created our jaws and our mouths and our teeth purposefully and with intention. And so, like, if He only meant us to be herbivores, then we'd only have like mashing and grinding teeth. But we have
Sure.
canines and we have incisors, and
Right.
those are associated with tearing. Like with more like carnivorous animals.
Yeah. No, I don't. Like I said, and well, for one, I believe in the in dispensationalism when it comes to as a Christian, and what that means essentially is that there are, it's not that like God changed His mind and like but like as um, as the times have changed, God has given His people essentially like not adjusting the rules, but like kind of it's kind of like they have you still have like the foundations, but they're it's like okay, well we can make some changes here, it's and so like the way that He deals with His people at different times are different. So like when you look at Adam in the garden before the fall, there's a certain set of rules, but now that there's the fall of man, well clearly he can't deal with Adam in the same way, so things have changed. So that's almost like
Well,
so it wasn't all like I said, the rules of what you're asking is the rules of the garden were not, that's not what we live by necessarily now today.
hmm, okay. I always lose my train of thought. Uh, you're always doing this to me, man.
I know, but no, it's but what you're saying is like, yeah. Now, did God have in mind what that man was always going to live in the garden? Well, clearly not, because He had a plan in place,
right, right. Because
and
ultimately, I think the plan was for God and man to be together always, in perfect unity.
right.
But of course, we messed that up. Like there's only one, there's only one question on the test, and we failed it.
We didn't write our name down.
Right. But what I was gonna ask is, like, but do you think, like, aside from dispensationalism, do you think it's just because God doesn't go back on His word, and since He gave us dominion over the earth, He I have to think about this a little bit more. I just love
Like, wait, so what you're thinking, like, was it always meant for us to eat animals right from the very beginning? That part.
Well, I mean, because He said that. Well, yeah. Was it always going to be part of the plan? Like, kind of like I think the way I view dispensationalism is kind of like leveling up.
That's a way of looking at it, like, because uh, I've actually kind of wrestled with what I think you're trying to ask,
Mm-hmm.
is that there is after Noah's flood, as Noah and his family are exiting the ark, is that Noah is given some new instruction, and that now it is you are able to eat of all the things of the earth, like for sustenance, because and or that's not like a word for word recitation of that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's curious enough, is like, so why was he putting that out there, you know now as opposed to before, which makes me think that maybe, although man had obviously you know was fallen, so were they not supposed to be eating animals because of and yet they were, and like, but
Oh,
now
so
that
pre-flood, they were eating animals even though they weren't supposed to.
that's what I'm thinking. Like there is some biblical evidence that that was the case, but like I said, I don't.
Well, but then the whole thing with Cain and Abel is that, Abel was the herdsman and Cain was the fieldsman or the farmer. And
Well, being
so,
a herdsman doesn't mean that you're
but
eating. You're not like hurting them for food. Like it's you're caring for them.
I know, but then what would be the point of the herd?
Like I said, he was a caretaker of the animals.
I guess, but then, but did God open the door for the eating of meat? When he killed the animals to make the skins for Adam and Eve.
Well, that's the thing is like the Adam and Eve didn't do that. God did that.
Right,
He made
right,
a sacrifice on their behalf
right.
to cover them, which is like which.
Yeah, which
And I think that
God
that's kind of
then,
like
God then is from there. That's where the sacrificial system came about.
bingo. And so like and essentially like what Cain was is like he was probably caring for, he was a herdsman for possibly like the sacrificial.
Of Abel.
Oh, yeah. So, like that's what like he was protecting, or um that's what he was doing. He was shepherding a the what would eventually become the sacrificial.
But not necessarily for food.
No, like I said, it's this isn't like something like where this is the definite answer. If you don't believe this, you're a crazy person. I'm
Right,
just
right,
saying
right. Yeah.
there's some very curious language that's used,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's evidence to, like I said, I don't think that you're wrong in like what you're saying. I'm just saying, like, for me, I see evidence that there was like there because we're after post flood, there is like where it's talked about where God had put like where there's the fear between like man and creature,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a way to like kind of help them spread out, and that's where like he also said like now you are able to eat of the creatures of the earth, whereas before there probably was not that fear of man and creature.
And is that post flood?
That yeah, so that happened post flood because I thinking what was before that
So
time.
so prior to the flood, they were all kind of like living harmoniously, more or
That's
less.
that's what I'm based off the language that's used post flood. That's what makes me think like yeah, that's probably what was happening, which is why it was so easy to get the damn like animals on the ark.
Even with the carnivorous beasts.
Well, that's the thing. Like I don't think that there was. Yeah, like I said, I don't know. I don't know if like they yes they were designed. God engineered them in a certain way, but we don't know if they were attacking people at that time, or if
Well, I
they
mean,
were.
well, yeah, because yeah, I mean, I know this is just a huge thought exercise, but it's
Like
like if
that's
they're
all it is.
designed, like if the carnivorous animals were built to eat meat, then what you're saying is that prior to the flood, the carnivorous animals weren't eating any other animal.
Right. Like I said, I'm not like I don't know what I've like I said, I've wrestled with this like a little bit. It's like, how they're obviously the way that man and creature interacted with one another was completely different back then. The way we interact with animals nowadays is, obviously, like, it's more obviously the post flood stuff, because there's dangerous animals out there that you don't want to fuck around with.
Right.
But like what was going on pre flood, I think the animals, the way man and creature interacted with one another is completely different. And but we also have to remember too is that there was much more, even though there was still work to be done, there was a greater abundance of sustenance for all creatures involved. They didn't have to work as hard.
Well, the way I would read or interpret the thing about God putting the fear within the animals to do you think that might mean that because God got him on the ark, so and like he obviously calmed them down so that they could every sort of animal could live on that ark. Do you think he just took maybe he removed the fear out of them for the flood while they're in the ark, and then put it back in them post flood?
That's a good question. I haven't really figured that out.
Right.
Or what I think.
I mean, I'm not expecting you to have an answer for me right now, but I'm just
no,
kind of just saying the question out loud.
Yeah, it's just like I said. It's yeah, that's something to think about.
Well, I guess one more question for you. Like the whole diet like restriction thing, is that under the ceremonial law?
So when it came to the actual dietary restrictions, that didn't come until the Mosaic Law was put into effect. So like what we get in whatchamacallit, in Deuteronomy and Leviticus, yeah. That all came about so there were no dietary laws up until that point, that we know of. Now, the reasoning for those dietary laws, I'm not really sure why. That could also be like kind of like a renewal of, like, it's just like kind of like with the garden. It's like, you can eat of everything but this. Can you do that? Although the dietary restrictions that they had were pretty intense.
Right, yeah. No animals with split hooves, or bottom feeders like shrimp and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But would that be categorized as the like the ceremonial law, like for like ceremonial cleansing and things like that?
I'd have to think about that a little bit. I'm not sure. But I think, like I said, but I know that those dietary restrictions did not come about until, the time of the Mosaic Law.
Okay.
So that would be like, yeah, it is part of like the ceremonial.
Right, because
law.
because a lot of people, when they hear like, oh, Jesus came to, fulfill the law, not not destroy it. People automatically go, oh, and that means we're free from the law. We can do whatever we want. It's like no. Like because context, of course, matters, and that we believe that Jesus fulfilled the ceremonial law, like the sacrificial stuff, where it's like his sacrifice, his blood covers the multitudes of their sins.
Well, and
And so yeah, so that's why I was curious to ask you if the dietary stuff was under the ceremonial law. Because
Like,
if it did fall under the ceremonial laws, then again, like, yeah, then Jesus, then kind of in the same way that God post flood said, like, eat what you want, did the same thing, and then affirmed that with the vision he gave to Peter.
and I that's yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah, I think it is part of, similar to like, circumcision, and yeah, like the dietary stuff, like those are all part of like the ceremonial law. By doing those things, you are setting yourselves apart as God's people, as opposed to like what everyone else around the world is doing. But like now the game has changed. There's and so it's like now it's, yeah, none of these creatures I created are unclean. Eat what you will. The because the important thing is now that Christ has lived and fulfilled the law, and you are a follower of him, and so you don't have to live by by these ceremonial laws anymore, because you live through Christ.
Right.
Like I said,
And I mean, right, and of course, in the context, yes, God was giving Peter the vision to also signal, it's like, oh, my word isn't just for the Jews, it's for everybody. And
yeah, which was a huge revelation, like, because yeah, the only time that we ever see any sort of like proselytizing is in Jonah, where he went to the Ninevites.
Jonah, God sends Jonah to the Midianites.
Literally dragged to the Ninevites.
Yeah, Ninevites. Right, yeah, because what is it? There's that old joke, like, Jews are great salesmen except for Judaism.
Dude, seriously, like, it's funny. Our friend Dan the Man, who's he's one of my favorite people in the world, but we always talk about that as like, do you guys like do any sort of like, do you taught is like, when people like, he always says, like, when people come up to us and say like they want to be Jewish, like, are you sure?
And I was like, yeah, you know what, it's not that great. It's like no pork, constant, constant guilt.
But yeah, like, it's the idea that it's those ceremonial laws, they they're fulfilled through Christ. We don't, and the idea that now everyone is included. That was always the plan. It's like, and to be honest, like, the reason why the Israelites were meant to live the way that they were is so that they could be a shining light to the rest of the world, that would attract people to them.
Right, and adopt. I mean, I know it wasn't Judaism. I know it wasn't called Judaism back then, but like, essentially, adopt, or convert to Judaism.
That's exactly, that was the point. That was what they were meant, and they should have been, at their height with like with King David and Solomon. It should have been something where they were bringing people in, that they were attracting new believers to, and kind of being a light to the rest of the world.
Right. They should have been.
And that's just not. That's just really not what happened.
Right. They should have been in the embodiment of, that poem at the base of the Statue of Liberty.
Exactly. That's what they were meant to be. And that's actually one of the great failures of the Israelites. And partly why they ended up being cast into exile from with the Assyrians and Babylonians. So it was, like I said, but what I see in like this, we have a new religious culture out there, like, not necessarily like of like a a big religion, but it's this
Yeah, it's a
group
little.
of
It's a lowercase r religion.
yeah, this group of very vocal people who want to you know tell you that, oh, eating meat is wrong and you're a bad person for doing it, and then make you feel, they look at you like when you eat a hamburger, like they look at you like you're eating their kitten. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
um and I'm uh, there's such a push towards that, like, and for me, I'm just like, I don't know if it's just because I'm a rebel or whatever. It's like, yeah, I don't like that, and I don't want to eat Beyond Meat. I don't want to eat like weird plant
Right.
baked meat.
Well, I mean, lucky. I mean, maybe lucky for you, but like Beyond Meat and all these meat substitutes, the companies are going under, like, and fast.
Are
They're going down. Yeah, they're going down hard. Uh,
good.
uh, it almost costs. I forget. I think it costs a little bit more to produce these fake patties, or the meat substitute patties, and also like dietarily or nutritionally, they're really bad for you. It's like a lot of it. There's like a bunch of soy and like a whole mess of salt.
Yeah.
So it's not. It's like it's literally healthier for you just to eat the hamburger.
Exactly. Because that's what you're meant to eat. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I live with I'm married to a Korean woman, so there's gonna be times where I do eat like tofu and certain things, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not like I'm not eating that every single day with like
Right. That's
like
not
my
that's
whole
not a
meal is
staple of
not.
your diet.
Yeah, like I said, I eat what's this like the spicy tofu soup, in Korean, sundabu. We all know what that. You know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Koreans will know what that is.
Yeah.
I eat that like not like every day, but like I eat it often enough. And then there's sometimes like where as like one of the sides, like my wife will grill some tofu, like that we dip
Yeah,
in
pan
like
fried tofu. Mm-hmm.
yeah, which is I also really enjoy that, to be honest. Um, and but that's like I said, that's I'm not eating that every like with in every freaking meal
Mm-hmm.
because that's not actually really good for you.
Right.
Um, uh, Especially for guys. Actually, eating too much soy for a man is actually really bad.
Right, because the
Um,
phytoestrogen in soybeans.
exactly. It's not. If you eat a bit like an excessive amount of it, it's really bad for men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it gets
Um,
you farty and gives you bitch tits.
yeah. But yeah, I just
Right.
but
Yeah. It's
I'm glad to hear that those guys are going under because I honestly I think what they're doing is actually very harmful.
right. I mean, yeah. Just think of the last. I mean, I don't know how often you watch TV, or maybe even like YouTube. Like, when's the last time you saw an ad pushing for the Beyond Meat stuff? I know, like they had like these huge contracts with a lot of the fast food places, but no one's buying them.
Of course they're not.
Yeah, I forget like where, maybe like Forbes or something, but there was like a report saying like, yeah, no one's buying the meat substitute burgers at McDonald's or at Burger King or whatever.
Yeah, because they're not fucking insane. Because the people, here's the thing, the people that are going there, trust me, they don't, uh, they don't want fake meat. I mean, it's not. I mean, you're going to McDonald's or like Burger King,
Right.
so like
Well, I
meat is
mean,
kind of suspect as it is, but like,
right. Well, I mean, to that point, then kind of like know your audience, and no one goes to, or no one went to McDonald's for a healthy option, right? Everyone knew that they're
that's for
going
sure.
there for speed and convenience. All right, that's all we knew this. All right, we didn't go
Exactly.
to McDonald's thinking it's like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna have 5 Big Macs, and that's totally a balanced meal. No, we know what we're getting.
Yeah.
We knew what we were getting. We weren't getting nutritious food, well balanced food.
Of course,
No,
yeah.
we're getting quick, convenient meals. That's it, and we knew that it was not the best for us, and I think we knew we weren't gonna eat it every single day.
Of course not. Don't get me wrong. I love going to Jack in the Box, but I don't go there for my fucking health.
Exactly. Jeez. You know? So I don't know like what these people like, why they, a lot of these fast food places started instituting these healthy options. Like McDonald's like with their salads, like and even that was a joke because, they gave you like a globs of the dressing, which totally negated the purpose of the salad.
Yeah. It's like I can make a salad at home, like with with a nice vinaigrette and
Right? Yeah, exactly. People knew what was up. We knew we weren't going to McDonald's or Burger King or Jack in the Box for healthy food. All right. So what is all like this like salads and wraps and now like fake meat? It's like we knew what we were getting. Okay, with
just like
McDonald's.
here's what happened, Andy. Just like everything in life, you have a very loud, small minority of people. Well, how? Oh, I went to McDonald's and they didn't have a vegetarian option. It's like, and because they get enough, the corporate gets enough phone calls from these 5 people. Well, I guess we have a problem. We should do this. It's like that's what happens, and
Right.
that's what,
Exactly. Yeah. So I know it's a
and
squeaky wheel getting.
I'm sure the people that produce that Beyond Meat, they probably paid McDonald's and like these fast food places like a shitload of money to put it on the menu, thinking
Well,
that they would get, thinking
no,
that they were
I
making.
think no. McDonald's paid them
You think
globs of
is
money.
that what happened? Good lord!
No, no, no.
No,
Yeah,
I
yeah. Of course, because because all like all restaurants and businesses, they want to be on the cutting edge. They want to be the vanguard. So of course, like
oh man, I would have thought the other way
of
around.
course all the fast food places would be adopt or be paying out the nose for this, so they could be cool and and hip and like, oh, we're the first ones. But like they're definitely not getting they're definitely not getting back their investment for sure.
Jesus, good lord.
Yeah. So I mean
Um,
I don't know when's the last time you've been to McDonald's, but I'm pretty sure if you go there now, like you will not see Beyond Meat burgers on their menu.
I haven't been in a while. I don't think I've been to McDonald's
Yeah, I
since the
mean since November for me is when they when they have the McRibs.
McRib.
Yeah.
That yep, same here. I haven't been. I haven't been.
Yes, and I know it's trash. Okay, let me have this.
And yes, it was like, oh, the McRib sucks. It's like, no, it's their best sandwich.
I know.
And
No, you
I
suck.
think,
Okay.
yeah, did they like? Is my understanding is like that they're not going to make that anymore?
What?
Are they done with the McRib like for good?
No. What? When was this? Where'd you hear this?
Well, like because they always talk about like the all the advertisements I saw like the McDonald's were like, oh, this is like the last chance to get the McRib. Like I don't know if that was just be like for like this season or if that was like for forever. I don't know.
Well, I hope they mean just for the season.
God, please, I hope so because honestly, that's the only reason I go to McDonald's anymore is for the fucking
Yeah, I
McRib.
mean, I just my burger place of choice now is In and Out, and then whatever, and then like if In and Out is not available, then whatever other, and if I'm really craving a burger, then just whatever burger place is close by.
I think the last burger I had with you, we went to Fat Burger, didn't we?
That sounds about right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, fuck, that was that their burgers are good too.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Especially because you can get like with an egg and stuff.
Yeah,
So
dude. We actually started making like our burgers at home. Man, you got to come over and have some burgers at my plate that we make at our place because we kind of do like we added like the bacon and egg and like chili and all that stuff. Oh my god,
all right, for
it's
sure.
so fucking good.
All right, next time you do that, let me know.
Yeah, I think I'll have you over for some burgers. I was just like, this is freaking heaven. Put on like a sourdough bun too. Oh yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah. I mean, I'm more of a brioche guy, but
See,
sourdough Jack is awesome. I don't know what people's
I'm not a
problems
big
are.
brioche guy. I don't like that. I don't like the
You know,
brioche
you
bun.
know, like the buttery richness of the brioche.
You know, I'm not saying it's not. It's okay. It's just like I don't. I'm not. It's not like, oh man, I have to have the brioche bun. I like more of like I'm a sourdough guy. I really like a sourdough bun.
Okay. I mean, I'm not judging, you know, because I enjoy a sourdough Jack every once in a while myself.
Um, but yeah, I'll have to have you over for burgers at some point. Yeah,
All
we'll have
right.
to do that.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about this the last couple of weeks and thought it would be fun to talk about with you, and it
Yeah.
certainly was.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. I mean, we kind of went all over the place, but you know, that's kind of what we do. Uh, but yeah, my overall thoughts of like vegetarianism or veganism. Yeah, it's a ritual without a rite.
You know, I can see like if for dietary reasons you
Right.
need
Right.
to
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
like more the vegetarian option. That's that's fine. I'm not I'm not criticizing those people. That's fine. Um, it's just more of the
Right.
and
It's more of the true believers,
yeah.
quote unquote.
Oh, he's a level 5 vegan. He doesn't eat anything that casts a shadow. Well, yeah, it's like those type of people. Um,
Right.
and I said, in some cases, like I said, the factory farming stuff, like the torturing of animals for to create food.
Mm-hmm.
I see that as a huge problem.
Right.
Um, and I don't, like I said, I am with the people that want to like help end that and make more of a to make it more of a cruelty-free thing, like where we're treating animals with respect, and we're treating them well. We're giving them open air to live as animals are meant to live. I'm all for that, but like, um, yeah, but I'm not into the whole vegan culture or whatever. I just no, I'm not gonna do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna buy into that religious rite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the only reason I asked if like the whole dietary thing found the sacrificial system was because I didn't want to give up pork.
No, and there's no. We're like I said, that has ended. Like I said, and that's the reason why I think we're given that excerpt in Acts is because it's for the very same thing. It's showing it's like what I created is not how dare you call what I created
Mm-hmm.
and that's the reason why. Because I like you, I actually I think pork is probably my favorite meat. To be honest, I do eat it quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like bacon. I like ham. I like sausage. I I like pork chops.
Mm-hmm.
The best meat is in the rump.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, I just thought it would be a fun topic to talk about, and it certainly was.
Mm-hmm. All right then. Okay. Well, that'll be the end of our discussion topics. Which means it's time for our review.
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right. Just to remind you guys again, tonight the movie is Shock Corridor, starring Peter Breck and Constance Tower. Let me hit y'all with the synopsis and we'll get going. Okay. Determined to pull in the Pulitzer Prize, reporter Johnny Barrett will go to any length necessary to win the coveted award. When he learns of an unsolved murder committed at a mental institution, Barrett devises a scheme to solve it and earn himself a recognition. With the assistance of a psychiatrist and his girlfriend, Barrett convinces the doctors at the institution to commit him. Once inside, he begins an investigation and gradually loses his mind.
So, well, this is well now I've seen the movie a few times now, but I'm assuming this is your first viewing of Shock Corridor.
Yeah, that's correct.
Have you ever heard of them before?
I have not heard of this movie up until you told me about it.
Yeah. What did you think about it?
I thought it was very interesting. And you're right, I do see where Scorsese got his inspiration to do Shutter Island.
Yeah, like I said, it's not like a one-for-one kind of like comparison.
Right.
But
it's not. Yeah, it's not a remake or reimagining of that story in Scorsese's. But
yeah,
I definitely see the influence.
Um,
my favorite is the black white supremacist.
That
and I think Chappelle got it from this movie. I'm gonna say it right now.
Same thing. I was like, did Dave Chappelle watch Shock Corridor?
Right, or like one of his writers.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Somebody somewhere.
Yeah, somebody on Chappelle's team saw this movie and like, that's a hilarious premise.
It is, and here it's kind of like we're not really laughing about it in the movie, but like the way that the dark comedy aspect of what Chappelle Show did with that is brilliant. Mm-hmm. Here it's just kind of like where a black man at that time, because of the racism that he was dealing with in the South, drove him to madness, and he ended up kind of like taking on like it
right.
almost
it's,
like
yeah, it's very much a dissociative
sickness
that he had.
That's
where he himself didn't view himself as a black man, and so then took on the persona of the white man. In this case, a member of the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah, so so all of our, you have like hold on a second, the characters, because Trent was the second, because we have Johnny. What, like you said, there's this murder that has gone unsolved at this mental institution, and him and his editor and the psychiatrist that they are all friends with, they think that the only way for Johnny to get this story, he's not going to just be able to go in there as a reporter and be able to talk to the patients and all that stuff. He's gonna to solve this thing, he's gonna have to descend into the madness, pretend that he's a crazy person, and he's been probably trained to be like, he's been trained to like what is gonna be asked of him, what he's gonna have to go through.
Right.
So, and possibly he's been doing that for like a year, I think, or so. And that's the only way he's going to be able to get to the story is by being a patient, which is fucking crazy to think about. But there was who was the first character? The guy that thought he was the Civil War. Oh, it's Stewart. Where he was the Confederate soldier Jeb Stuart. What I thought was, the way I thought that this was the movie played out was really interesting, because you have all the characters that he's talking with there, that where he's trying to figure out the story. Like I said, all three of them have like some sort of dissociative problem where their mind has fractured because of whatever trauma they've gone through, and he is trying to, in some way, Johnny is actually a better psychiatrist than the actual doctors and attendants at the asylum, because he is the only one in probably years that has actually gotten in contact with their sane self. So like what we
Right. Yeah, because Johnny does the whole like kind of play into the narrative, which allows them to you know come out of their delusion for a moment and be themselves.
here's
And I'm pretty sure that's where Scorsese got the idea of the whole like elaborate um,
yeah,
treatment thing, or like kind of play into Teddy's delusion thing.
exactly. What I thought was brilliant on what Sam Fuller did with this is that the characters, when they finally were starting to gain some clarity, you got the images where we had the stuff that was in color. It was in Technicolor, where it was like that was them kind of like awakening for the first. It feels like they've been they're awakening for the first time in years, and they're starting to see things clearly. It's like, wait a second, where am I? Like, I know. It's like, yeah, okay, shit. Like, where I remember, like, so like Stewart, he
Yeah, he
was
was
in
a
the Korean
soldier.
War. He's a Korean War veteran who unfortunately was captured by the North Koreans and turned into, like, he was brainwashed into becoming a communist, and only snapped out of it when another POW that they captured kind of like snapped him out of it, and he went back to the United States and was, I think his mind fractured when his country was spitting on him, and he ended up essentially being abandoned by the government, the U.S.
Right.
government,
Yeah. I
his
mean, kind of like
his
the kind of
family.
like the pre-Vietnam treatment.
Yeah, and this is also like this came out in 1963. So although there was a lot of the Vietnam War was going on, there wasn't quite the same
Right. We weren't
animosity,
as involved.
right,
Yeah, we were still
as it was
mostly
like
technical advisors or whatever.
exactly. So I thought that that was really interesting, like how they like because all the characters have like that kind of disassociative uh, the witnesses have that about them, and Johnny's the only one that seems to be able to like kind of he plays along for a minute, and then
Yeah,
like
he's the
to
only
help
one
you
able to
snap
reach
out of
them.
it. The so yeah, so we have uh, Stewart, who thinks he's Jeb Stewart, and then it's like we think oh man, he's getting better, and then something like happens again, and like it's like he snaps back into like his insane self, which is it's like damn it, I was so close, like figuring, but he got a clue about like who killed this patient in the the mental institution, and it turns out it wasn't like a patient who killed the patient, it was one of either a doctor or an attendant. And so okay, so now I know what to do. The something I thought was kind of weird, like because this is also like as he was like when he was working with Stewart, this is where Johnny I think starts to go a little crazy, because we had I don't think he's sleeping well, because you have the one patient that although he's harmless, you have the guy that's like constantly singing opera like throughout the night, keeping him awake. So I don't think that Johnny is sleeping very well. And then he obviously like he had spent several months in this place before he even like got to really talk with Stewart. but then Stuart, as he's like starting to work on Stuart, he gets attacked. Johnny gets attacked by those the nymphomaniacs, the women ward.
Oh yeah, that was hilarious.
Dude, that was like a mummy attack. It was, that whole scene was fucking weird.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think about that, but I think that's like where I think that's where like Johnny started to go like a little bit nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as like, because his girlfriend, was it Kathy? Is that Constance? Yeah, Kathy. When she goes to like kind of like, you know, kiss him and stuff like that, he's like, ah, like don't do that, like.
Right, he's starting to believe the delusion.
Yeah, but I also think it has to do with like what the Amazons, you know, what he says, like what the
right, yeah, the nymphos
did to him, because they weren't like trying to have sex with him. It looked like they were trying to eat him alive.
Right.
Yeah, that was a fucking weird scene. That whole scene freaked me the fuck out. I was like, this is horrific. I felt like I was going crazy, to be honest. So now we'll get to not Stewart, but now, so he gets a Stewart, he gets that clue. Now we're on to Trent. What did you think about, like, you know, Trent and his story?
Wait, Trent is the...
He's the black white supremacist.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, very interesting.
I think that was such a kind of really revolutionary idea to do at that time.
Yeah.
I think it's super bold because, like I said, you're at the kind of like in the middle of the heat of the civil rights movement, and to think, you know, and to be honest, I'm sure that there must have been a trend, a real trend at some point, like where you had a guy that was a black guy who might have been targeted by certain, you know, by racism to a great extent, and where it drove him to madness.
Yeah. I could totally see that actually, you know, being based off an, you know, actual mental patient.
I imagine there has to be at least like a few that like had that, like where they,
right, because like especially for his story where, you know, he was the first, you know, black student at a southern white university. Yeah,
you know, it is probably like he's probably like one of the you know, kind of not recipients, but like one of the people that was benefited from the Brown versus Board of Education, and was probably targeted. And, you know, there's a lot of people, you know, when we think of the civil rights movement, we think of guys like, you know, Jackie Robinson, we think of, you know, Martin Luther King or Malcolm X, these guys that had like really strong fortitude and they dealt with a lot of shit. But at the on the other spectrum, we probably have a lot of people like Trent who were driven to madness.
Right, where like, yeah, he was like, yeah, all those like big names, they were, yeah, celebrities in their own right, and so they had, you know, they constantly had eyes on them, and so, you know, I think, and they probably had some quality in them that fortified them for that responsibility. But to have that kind of responsibility on, you know, on a smaller scale, but no less stressful, you know, on a regular person, I'm sure the weight of that was crushing.
Yeah, the one thing that I thought was also kind of interesting too with Trent, and like the whole scene of like him, he took the persona he took on, his you know, when his mind fractured, is that he took on the role like the racist of the racism that was being hurled at him.
Mm-hmm.
He took that on and became that racist guy,
Mm-hmm.
and as a way of maybe as protecting himself.
Mm-hmm.
But even when he does get his moment of clarity, it's not like what we had with Stewart. It's still somewhat broken because we're not seeing um although we're seeing a little bit into Trent's mind. He was thinking about like the idea of like, I don't want to be black anymore. I'd rather be like, I'm not a black person, I'm a brown person. I'm trying to change my blood and skin color. And
Mm-hmm.
he's still like, there's somewhat of like a, even in his clarity, he's still somewhat fractured and broken.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he's also like, and Johnny's like, to a degree, I don't think Johnny really cares much about about Trent's life. I think all he cares about is like, did you see about like Sloan and like who killed Sloan?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Sloan is the patient that was killed.
Right.
And it's like, did you see who did it? And it's like, oh yeah, I did. And like, but then he kept like kind of like fluttering back and forth between his own story and his own like brokenness, like in when he was, his mind was clear. Um, and I think they always end up playing like, some sort of, what you would consider like a Southern like Dixie song or whatever. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was like, like what was it? What was on the horn of the General Lee or whatever.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But
Uh,
but yeah, it's he. Do you? Here's the other thing. Do you get the feeling that like Johnny gives a shit about any of these patients?
excuse me. Um, no, no, not at all.
I don't think he gives a damn about any of them. I
Yeah,
think he
this
cares
isn't
about.
like one flew over the cuckoo's nest, and
That's actually, so that's a good. I was thinking about this movie too. I was thinking about that movie too when I was watching this.
mm-hmm.
See, Jack Nicholson's character, I think McMurphy. I think he cares more about the patients than Johnny cares about the patients around him.
Right, because for Johnny, they're just sources of information and a means to getting the story, which will get him the Pulitzer.
But yeah, well, Johnny does have the ability to like kind of help snap these guys out of it.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't actually care about them.
Right, he doesn't
Whereas
care if they do.
McMurphy actually gives the although he does have his own selfish interests,
Mm-hmm.
he actually does give the other patients some dignity.
Mm-hmm.
He does actually treat them with some respect. He treats them like real people.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's why in the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Chief was the first one to talk to him in like however many years because he reached out to him and he treated him like a person.
Yeah. But yeah.
Who's that big guy that drew people? Was that?
Oh, that. So the third patient, that was Dr. Bowden.
Right. Yeah, he was like physicist or whatever who reverted to a child.
Yeah.
I really wonder what he drew. The portrait that he did of Johnny. I wonder what he drew. We're never shown.
Yeah, I was thinking of it. Yeah, I'm glad
But
you brought that up.
it greatly enraged Johnny and like insulted him a bit. And we never see what Bowden draws, but I'm curious what he did draw. Was he maybe drawing, Johnny's inner self, like being manifested, manifesting because of his environment, or
That's what I was thinking about. Like I was kind of thinking it had to be something like about like where it captured Johnny's like inner being.
mm-hmm.
And it was kind of like what Dr. Bowden was drawing was almost like him holding up a mirror to Johnny and showing, and Johnny wasn't, he's already kind of at the breaking point. Through like he's had the electrical shock treatment. He's been attacked by the nymphos. He's been thrown in the hole. He's been at this place for several months now, I would assume. And that was the breaking point. But yeah, like that's a good question. Yeah, we don't see what Dr. Bowden drew, and I think that's also like I think that's a great choice by the director to do that, because it leaves us like, I think it causes us to think about like what you think through when you have that conversation, and it's not like fully answered, but you can create on that. That actually be if he was still alive, obviously, like that would be a question I would ask Sam Fuller. Like what did you have in mind that Dr. Bowden drew in that scene that caused Johnny to just fucking snap? But here's the other thing too. Although Dr. Bowden does get, I think, because when Johnny is talking with Dr. Bowden, the attendants are actually very receptive to him doing that. It's like, or like the one attendant who like started out very very cruel to Johnny was actually like in this scene talking with Dr. Bowden was actually very nice to him. It's like, you might be the only one that can reach him, Johnny, which means that they've been watching him with the other patients and realizing that oh, he's actually helped these guys a little bit, like where like they're not as crazy, and he's done more than they've done. So they're actually receptive to him talking to Dr. Bowden. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Right. Yeah, because this is before cameras and stuff, and so it's not as though they're looking at him through security cameras and be like, oh yeah, he's actually having some success. So like these people are around, but interestingly, like they know Johnny's profession. They know that Johnny, like, he didn't go under some like pseudonym or alias. He used his professional.
He used his real name.
Yeah, he used his real name.
Real profession.
He's used real profession. So they know that he's a reporter or a journalist.
Right.
So it was interesting that they weren't watching him, or like they weren't like really hovering around him. Or maybe because he came in, as a psychiatric patient, and particularly, someone who had, diagnosed with like, incestuous, impulses. They thought, maybe like, especially because like the murderer thought that, he was harmless.
Yeah. But I also thought it was kind of curious, for whatever reason, we don't quite. Dr. Bowden doesn't get that scene of. We don't get that like scene in Technicolor of the clarity with him.
Right.
Which I also think was a decision by the director to not include that, and which makes me think that maybe he wasn't fully awakened, or like or he didn't completely snap out of it for a moment. But he does reveal that it was the what was the attendant's name? It was Wilkes. Thank you. Yeah, Wilkes was the actual killer of Sloan, because in Dr. Bowden talks about Sloan had morals, and it turns out that Wilkes was fucking the nymphos, and Sloan saw this and was going to tell
gonna expose him.
Was going to expose him, and yeah, it obviously that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem was that uh, uh, that picture is shown to Johnny, and he snaps. He gets the information that he needs. Although like he's having trouble with his speech because he's been had that electroshock therapy,
Mm-hmm.
but he finally does get the words out and gets the information he needs, and then he snaps and attacks Dr. Bowden, and after that he is not like you. He's starting to go crazy. We get
Yeah.
the because what we get the scene with where he's sitting down to with his roommate Pagliacci,
Mm-hmm.
and he starts like hearing like the thunder going, and there's that scene of like the whole corridor, like it's like this torrential downpour,
Mm-hmm.
which that's actually the last scene that was filmed. And the reason that was filmed is so Sam Fuller did that on purpose so that he would not have to do any reshoots.
Right. I mean, that's smart.
I was like, that's fucking brilliant. Like,
Yeah, because
that's
like it'd be a pain in the ass to like drench the set and then have like wipe it down, dry it completely, and then try to do it over again. I don't think so.
oh, and one other like side note too that I thought was cool about the movie. So it looks like it's this giant ass corridor, right? Like it just goes on forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
It does not. It's actually a very small set that they did a. So the people that were in the background,
Mm-hmm.
those are midgets.
No way.
Yeah, like the two people off in the far background,
Uh huh.
those are midgets. And
Wow.
so if you look really
And it's
like
and it's like
now,
a little bit further. It's just a matte painting.
yeah, and like once because when I first watched it, I was like, it's like fuck, this thing goes on forever. Like this must have been like a massive set. And then when I watched like all the extras that I had on it, and I was like, and they said, oh yeah, it's yeah, those are midgets. And I was like, and that's a matte painting in the background. I was like, oh shit, like I had no fucking, now that I know it, like I see it, but I'm like, man, had I could, if I didn't know that information and I just kept watching the movie, I would have never noticed that. That was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
like the scene, like the scene, like when Trent is like running after that other black patient,
Mm-hmm.
the way they cut it, they're actually running across the whole set, and like it's
Oh,
like the
so
cut it.
so it's like what's it? I don't know if you've been on social media lately, but there's this thing that people do like the anime run,
Mhm.
and they just like go into the bathroom and they're constantly running and then they're like splicing um themselves, just basically, running back and forth across like the bathroom mirror. And so
Yep.
when you stitch it together, it looks like you're constantly running through a scene.
Yeah. That's it's kind of like that what they did there
Oh,
in
okay.
Shot Corridor. It's
That's
really
pretty
it's
clever.
quite, yeah, it's very clever, especially because the film had like no budget. So
Right.
um actually this and one thing about Sam Fuller too, he was a guy, he was an outsider that worked within the studio system,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a guy like when the studio system kind of like failed and crashed, he essentially never really got a lot of work.
Mm.
Um
Or at least the
uh
first time, right? Because I mean, now the studio system is kind of falling apart again. But
Well, but the studio system, the way it is now, is not what it was back in like the 50s and
well,
60s.
right, that's what I'm saying. Like there was the first, studio system crash, and now the studios are suffering from a not too dissimilar crash
Yeah,
now.
you would be right on that. But yeah, so you have so then but like it's essentially like Johnny is going nuts. I mean, he's starting to lose it. He feels like he feels like he's getting like electrified, and I think this also has to go with like the fact that he that shock therapy I think fucked him up more than we think.
Right.
Um, and in reality, he's just sitting on the bench with Pagliacci. It's like, John, oh, it's such a sour note, John. It's like fucking Pagliacci. That guy is like he's unintentionally he's super funny.
Yeah.
But he ends up like confronting Wilkes. There's this huge like fight between them, and it's kind of like he forces a confession out of Wilkes for everyone to hear, and he does get the story that he wanted. He writes the story, and so this is the one thing about the movie that I'm like, okay, I don't really. I think I needed like an extra like 20 or 30 minutes of story here,
Right.
because we
right, because like his break really happens off screen, off camera.
Right. So I'm wondering, like, did he end up leaving the facility, write the story, get he's gonna get the Pulitzer Prize, and something happens to him, like where like he has like a like PTSD, and he like his brain fractures completely, and he goes catatonic and goes back into the institution. It's like, what happened? He didn't write the story in the mental institution.
Right.
So that's where I was like, that's to me, that is the one knock on this film, is that like I feel like we needed an extra like 20 minutes.
Right, because with Scorsese's film, he kind of leaves it ambiguous. Although I think
But he earns the ambiguousness there a little.
Right. But yeah, but even though like I think our theory is the correct interpretation of the ending of that movie. But in this case, it could do with a little bit more clarity. And yeah, like an extra 20 minutes of John writing writing the piece, and like his hand starts like his hand like locks into and won't like he can't like type or whatever. And then
like I said, we don't need a lot, just a little bit, just like
little here and there, like him like again like Constance tries to like get intimate with it, and just like kind of like wraps her arms around it, and like he like kind of like freaks out.
Yeah.
And then like you slowly see like the progression where then like one day maybe Constance comes and he's like just standing in front of the window, just like kind of like in a catatonic state.
Yeah. What do you
and we get that conclude that that payoff of him finally seeing him in that catatonic state in the doctor's office.
Yeah. What do you think about Kathy as a character? What do you think about her?
I think she was pretty solid. I think she was placed in an unenviable. I think she was put in an enviable position. Help the man you love. Achieve his like most coveted goal, or just walk away from him.
She couldn't walk away from
him. She couldn't walk away from him, but again, she was placed in a unenviable position. But I think she was a pretty solid character.
Yeah, to a degree too. Like, because you think of like, because Johnny seems to come off as like a very selfish guy. Like he's like it's like his whole focus is getting this fucking like Pulitzer Prize. But I think there is a part of him that like he really does care about Kathy, because in his he is his she is constantly on his mind. That's why he's always like kind of having those hallucinations with her in his like dreams. Which it's kind of like when you on the Criterion edition. I don't know about like any of the other editions, but when you look at the Blu-ray case, you have Kathy right here, like at the middle of his
right in the middle of mine.
Yeah, and to be honest, the artwork that is done for it's also on the Blu-ray itself. You have Johnny here with Kathy here, kind of like because she's like kind of this like disembodied like floating entity like in his.
She's just a vision in his mind.
Which for 1963 a brilliant kind of effect.
Right.
So, but I just I don't know, man. Like this movie, like really got to me. I thought it was really great. I think it's a great idea. I think the characters are fascinating. I think the story is fascinating. You do see like where Scorsese got some of his ideas from this to create Shutter Island. And what I like that Scorsese did is he didn't just like he's not trying to create Shock Corridor. Like he took elements and used that to create a whole brand new story, of his own. And yeah, I just I don't have anything else really to say about Shock Corridor other than I really like this film a lot, and it was just like I went into the movie blind, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too.
Well, let's get into our rating.
All right. Let's get into our rating. Why don't you start us off?
You want me to start off? I'm gonna give this movie a 4. And mainly because like what I just talked about, like I needed an extra 15 minutes of kind of like seeing Johnny work. He gets the Pulitzer. He gets his article written. He's like on his way to getting the Pulitzer Prize. But the insane asylum it was almost it was Kathy was right. It did that sickness. It was too much for him. Like he was around insanity for so long that it made him insane. And it's like, well, he did like make it out okay. In reality.
Yeah, but the effects eventually caught up with him.
Exactly. Like I said, maybe just an extra 15 minutes just to get.
Right, because like
just to get that out there.
Right, especially like when it like the scene where he gets the confession. It's like, it's like, well, when I'm not sure if he says this exactly or even at all, but it's like oh, I have a story to write, and then it cuts to like some months later, and Kathy and Johnny are in the doctor's office, and
he's doing the whole like Frankenstein hand like some of the other catatonic patients were doing.
Right, but if we could just had that extra like you said 15 minutes and just seeing like him like him at the typewriter, and then like his hand just kind of like stops moving for some reason, or or then like him like Kathy catching him and like kind of staring off into blankly, out the window, and then finally when he gets the news that he's gonna get the Pulitzer, and Kathy finds him and he's just gone, and then we can have like a scream, and then cut to them in the doctor's office, and the doctor like explaining all of this.
Yeah, like I said, that would make that to me a 5-star movie at that point. We don't get that. That's fine.
It is what it is.
It's great the way it is. It's so I'm not to mess with what Samuel Fuller did give us, which is a great movie. But yeah, I would give it a 4 stars out of 5.
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna come in with the. I'm gonna agree with you, and I'll come in at a 4 as well. I mean, given the the limitations of the time, and also just like budget constraints, they were able to crank out a banger.
This is a brilliant fucking film, like, and they
Yeah.
do some really astonishing, experimental things that I think, man, like he really pushed the envelope with this one. Like, this is intense. This
Yeah, I
is
mean, you might take it for granted now, but like the whole shooting it in black and white, but then introducing like elements of like color footage
to show
and
clarity,
yeah, to
like
show
that their
clarity.
mind is
Yeah,
clearing up.
right. Because if you show just black and white stuff, you probably just think it's like, oh, that doesn't mean anything. But to have like that distinction is very powerful.
I remember when I saw that for the first time, I was like, "Oh shit!" Like, this is like, because it comes out of nowhere.
Right. It makes you
like,
stop and take notice.
Yeah, it's I thought it was brilliant.
I concur.
Yeah, because well, and then the other thing is like, the last piece of like color that we see in the film is also like with Johnny, where when he is, we see like I don't think it's Niagara Falls, but like some sort of like waterfall, and that's like all he hears, and I don't know if he's like going back to a time like where from his past, but yeah, it's like each iteration of like those color sequences, like we get like the first one is like a huge bit of clarity with Jeb, with Stewart, and then it's like a little bit less clarity with Trent, and then it's we're not even really sure what we're getting with Johnny's color vision. So yeah, overall, I think like I said, this is a brilliant film. Sam Fuller is like one of those great directors that not a lot of people talk about. But yeah, like you look down at his filmography, he's done some brilliant stuff that I think people should watch. If you like, he does like a lot of war movies, like the Steel Helmet is really good, from what I hear. I'm gonna watch that probably this week. The Big Red One, I have seen. That might be one of the greatest war films ever done. It is so good, and if you're a fan of Mark Hamill, it's his best role. And if you do have the like the Criterion stream service, check out his Shock Corridor is on their service. It does have the documentary about Sam Fuller. You should check it out. It's really good, and you'll learn. You'll get some really good information off of it.
All right, folks, there you have it. That's our review for Shock Corridor. Both Robert and I give it a 4. Definitely a movie to watch. Very well done. Even given the limitations of the technology at the time, I think what they had to work with. They knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
do yourself a favor and check it
out. I think next week we'll do something a little bit more fun. Let's do the Bourne Identity.
All right, there you have it. Okay, we'll do Bourne Identity. So next week we'll be doing Bourne Identity. So look forward to that. That'll bring us to the end of our stream tonight. I hope you had a good time. I had a good time. I know Rob always has a good time.
Tuesday is my favorite day of the week.
Don't forget to check out the library of other content that we have, the Circle of Jerks main podcast, episodes of Nocturnal Transmissions, of course, and Rob's gaming show, Up by Up Down. Don't forget to follow us on our various social media accounts, Twitter and Letterboxd @PodcastCOJ, and Instagram @Circle of Jerks Podcast. With all that said, we thank you for joining us tonight. Come back next week, and we'll do it all over again. Have a good one.